Are you worried about today's dire financial situation?
Put simply, I would argue the Biden economic plan is working.
The storms on Wall Street continue today after regulators seized the assets of Silicon Valley Bank, marking the largest bank failure since the 2008 financial crisis.
Do you worry you'll have enough to pay your mortgage, pay your children's college tuition, enough to retire?
I believe our banking system remains strong.
Regional banks in focus once again today as the market digests the fallout of the First Republic failure.
You have questions, we have answers. It's the Gold Standard with Ken Russo and Jennifer Horn.
Thank you for joining us. It is the Gold Standard Radio Show. Ken Russo, Jennifer Horn, back together again. Back for more. And you know what, Ken? We are not alone this week. We finally knew it. If we put out tickets for a studio audience, we'd finally get one. No, I'm just kidding. We have a special invited guest in studio today, a fan of this program and a lovely woman from Los Angeles, California. Joan M is here. Joan, thanks for being in studio with us.
Thank you for the invitation.
All right, we're going to talk more in a second. But before we jump in with Joan, Ken.
Takes a lot to excite me.
Yeah, you're excited.
I'm excited today.
I know. Usually we get sarcastic,
yes.
Ken. Today we have excited, Ken.
Yes.
And that's because we're going to have some fun today. We're going to talk about Joan. She's a customer of Midas Gold Group. She's going to talk about why she loves gold, and we're going to go through some of the big stories of the week. How about that? I mean, it's easy peasy. But first, we must know how we got into the financial crisis that we are in. If you've looked around, you probably have noticed. And it all goes back to 1971. President Richard Nixon is in office.
Mm-hmm.
Can I hear him?
There's a lady in the studio. We're going to suspend.
Thank you, Joan. I appreciate
We're
that.
going to suspend the convertibility of the dollar into gold. We're going to start fiat money. Let's get this party rolling. Joan, what are you doing after the show?
I love how the minute Joan comes in, all of a sudden President Nixon is no longer interested in me. It's very sad, very sad. All right, so President Nixon did decide to take us off, right? The gold standard. Now we have money that's backed by nothing. And guess what? Our dollar starts to do what, Ken?
It's dying.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just printing it into oblivion. It's worth less and less and less, just being abused by our wonderful political leaders. And I actually asked Joan a question this before.
Tell me.
What did you say, Joan, about the fern?
Oh, we're getting rid of the fern. We have to get rid of the Federal Reserve, note, FRN.
Okay.
And that way we'll be able to get rid of inflation.
So, Joan, I take this as maybe a sign. I noticed that when I walked into the studio today, there was a car in the parking lot that had a bumper sticker that said, "Get rid of the Fed." Now, could that have been yours?
That's one of my bumper stickers. Also, it was, I had the first and second recall Gavin Newsom.
I love
bumper
it.
stickers.
You gotta love that. But the Fed has got to go. And I think that there are a lot of people who feel that. Why do you feel that way, Joan?
In 1913, there were some families that got together. They had a huge history with each other for maybe 1,000 or more years. Mm-hmm. And they went off the coast of New York, and they met at a place called Jekyll Island, and they created the Federal Reserve.
Mm-hmm. Not federal, not a bank.
It's not.
And there's no
They're
reserves.
not federal. It might as well be McDonald's or Thrifty's or any other private corporation, which is what it is. And when we have been electing, quote unquote, really, they've been installing, giving us two choices, but always installing presidents. Since 1913, that is, the presidents had been the president of the corporation. Trump was the first one to say, I am not president of the corporation. Mm-hmm. One of the ways that you can tell also what kind of rule structure they're following is when you look at their version of the Constitution and our version of the Constitution. So when it's we the people and the American Constitution, or the Constitution of the United States of America, for them, it's always fully capitalized.
Interesting.
Just like every letter when in your passport, which is like that you can leave your plantation and you can go to another plantation. Literally what they did with slaves. And so this is how they've been treating us for all of this time. And they've been taking stock of us. That's what your social security number is for when you're born. You are cow or calf number 4,000, whatever.
Right.
See, I told you we were going to have a little
I love
excitement
it.
today, okay?
I love
Did
it.
you see
I
this?
know. Well,
And the very first dollar bill, how much do you think, how many pennies were we taught was the first dollar, how many copper pennies was the first dollar bill worth? The first Federal Reserve note, which is a note, it's an IOU.
Mm-hmm.
So how many pennies was that first one worth in 1913?
I mean, I've always thought 100 pennies made $1, but I don't know. Am I
Exactly.
wrong?
Yeah. Yes, you are correct. You are wrong.
I am wrong.
The
too.
very first dollar, it was not an American dollar. It was not done by our treasury. It was not for we the people. It was not minted by us. It was it was worth 98 cents.
So are you saying that
Wow.
our money, Joan, has been kind of like a
Usury.
fraud,
Usury.
even
Yeah.
from the beginning? You know,
It's usury. We have been borrowing their money, their dollar bills,
And paying them to do it.
and paying them the leasing on their paper, on their printing, on their design, and on their distribution. Yes.
Wow.
So-
That's a good reason right now why you want to own the real stuff, right? That's why gold and silver seems to be the way to go because it's real. It's been there throughout time. We don't have to rely on paper with numbers printed on it by, as you mentioned, Joan, a corporation.
yeah, and 2024 now, Joan, we're in.
Mm-hmm.
How would you say that the health of that system is? I mean, based on everything that's happened up to this point, where we are now with debt and the printing of money and the political situation, because the topic of this show today, the political reasons to own gold. What is it about that system and in 2024 that concerned you enough to say, hey, listen, I need to do something to change my situation, to make my situation a little bit stronger?
Well, every time these families have taken for a particular financial standard around the world, and it's been all different countries for between 150 and 250 years. And then it crashes out, and then they go to another country or they start another war because they're always financing both sides of every single war. And they start the very first thing they do at the end of one of their wars where they monetize it. They make money from the wars.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the reasons why they set us against each other. They do it for religious, they do it for color, they do it for sex, they do it for everything. So the whole idea is to break us apart. If this is our time, the American dollar if this is the time that it's going down. So the reason is because they're trying to get us into another war. That's how they keep kind of bucking it up like every 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, the war on terror back in 2002, right, or 2003 when it actually kicked off?
Oh, you mean when the CIA started like ISIS and all those kinds of things?
Exactly, that stuff.
Yeah.
And monetarily, I think they said at the time that the war on terror was going to cost us about $80 billion. And
Well, that's what they were looking to collect and line their pockets with.
20 years later, I think it's like 14 or 15 trillion.
It's incredible.
And
Incredible.
where did all this money come from, Joan? Where did all these Federal Reserve notes just come from?
Well, it came from us and from wars and building new central banks. Every single place that there was a war, that's the first thing that before they put water, before they put fresh food, the first thing that they ever did was open up a private centralized bank in every country from every single war until they had about 186 of them at this point.
Wow.
And the main reason being that they have the ability to create money out of thin air, basically? Is that what you think?
It used to be with gold and silver. Then it always goes into fiat.
Mm-hmm.
And then it gets used up because, as I was saying, so every 2 cents on the very first dollar bill, you needed to work again to pay the taxes, to pay that 2 cents back. So you need to earn a second dollar. So all it did was exponentially make you poor. This is how we've been indebted to these people and enslaved by them. We have to work to pay off from each subsequent dollar.
So what I'm learning here
They want more taxes.
is that Joan is going to be the new host of the Gold Standard Radio Show.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Wow, I'm
glad
impressed.
because it's giving, we come in here every week, right, Jen?
Yeah.
And we talk about the same things. Here's a successful, beautiful lady that, has been part of this for a very long time, and she's seen what's going on. She's very, very awake, and she realizes what a sham this whole financial system and our money is. And, we talk about what could you do, to protect yourself from that kind of a system financially. She goes a lot deeper than that. So I'm glad that people have a chance this week to hear a different point of view because it's important. It's in my opinion, real knowledge.
It is real knowledge. And I would say, and just to kind of wrap up this conversation, we'll come back and we'll talk about kind of the politics, the political reasons to own gold. But I would ask you this, Joan, when you started getting this knowledge, was this something that was passed to you from your family? Have you been looking for this? When was your aha moment that this was all going on? Because I think for many of us, we're just, head in the sand and we're hoping that the government is working in our best interest. And clearly that's not the case. That's
aha. You, Jen?
Yeah, no, just your aha moment, Joan. Like, when did you start educating yourself on this kind of stuff? What was the moment where you thought, I need to figure this out because the government isn't working in our best interest?
My father and I, we played the stock market. He taught me when I was about 13 years old all about the stock market. I followed 42 different stocks for 1 year, and I grafted the whole thing.
Wow.
Yes. And so at that point, I had a very good feel of that there was something else at play. Like everyone was getting a certain telephone call for things to be happening in the stock market. And when you do it that way, you just feel it. Maybe when Kramer, before he got so crazy, maybe when Kramer does it for you or when someone else is graphing it for you. But when you're looking at the stock market all the time, that's what you see. And my dad, he wanted to invest in gold. We invested in something called Spider, which was a gold mining and a gold holding company. And it just didn't make sense. The numbers were not making any kind of sense. And that was my first clue that if you bought gold, you better not be buying paper. You better be buying it and putting it in your hand.
I love that. And let's take a break right there. And Joan is in the studio with us today on the Gold Standard Radio Show. She's a listener from Los Angeles in sharing her experience. And you
Ken's
can call.
Just sitting here.
Yeah, we're all just watching and enjoying. You can call Midas Gold Group and get gold for yourself. 855-322-4653. 855-322-GOLD. More up ahead. Ken Russo, Jennifer Horn, and Joan from Los Angeles. It's the Gold Standard Radio Show.
Dr. Gorka here. You're listening to The Gold Standard with your hosts, Ken Russo from veteran-owned Midas Gold Group and Jennifer Horn. Owning private money in the form of physical gold and silver is perhaps more important than ever to your long-term financial security. As U.S. banks fail, the Biden administration sends hundreds of billions abroad while depleting our strategic oil reserves. However, the biggest financial threat may be coming from within: central bank digital currency. The patents have been filed and the big banks have released plans for implementation. Midas Gold Group sees tyrannical implications, the end of cash, the end of financial privacy, big government able to see your every purchase. Could there be ties to social credit? Hear more commentary on the political and economic issues that affect your financial security right here on the Gold Standard. You can create your own Gold Standard with a call to Midas Gold Group, 855-322-GOLD. That's 855-322-4653, MidasGoldGroup.com.
Welcome back. It is the Gold Standard Radio Show. Ken Russo and Jennifer Horn back together again, and this time with a special in-studio guest, one of our listeners from Los Angeles, California, a customer of Midas Gold Group as well, someone who really knows her stuff, you can tell, and knows the ins and outs of why people should have gold at home to protect yourself. Joan M is here from Los Angeles. Joan and Ken, welcome back. It's the gold standard.
Ready for part 2.
Ready for part 2.
Yes.
So we were kind of going through, I asked what the aha moment was, what the wake up moment was for Joan in owning gold. She also talked about the reasons for it. And really, you could significantly see these, well, looking back now, see a timeline as to the answer of that question. Now, let's kind of fast forward a bit, Joan, to what you said about 2016. Was that where we were?
Well, we did from 1971 when Nixon took us off the gold standard.
Sure.
You know it.
That was the number one. That was the number one problem. And due to quote unquote speculation, which doesn't make sense because you'd be mining gold no matter. That's isn't that what they were called? Like
temporarily, right? Temporarily for the benefit
little
of the dollar, right?
Minor experiment.
Yes.
It was temporary for 50 years.
Yes.
Would you say that experiment now, Joan, is blowing up? Would you say that fiat experiment from 1971 is kind of on its last leg? How do you feel about that?
I'm not one for it to, quote unquote, believe in the science. I am someone who understands that science is something that can be done over and over and over, and you get the same results. So I don't believe in that science.
Okay.
All right, so then we go to 2008, you mentioned, right? And then the housing crisis.
2008 through the Bank of London, and they destroyed so much stuff because they didn't know what else to do. And I'm talking about Federal Reserve, our Federal Reserve, which is the private centralized banks in over 186 countries. And then what was my next point?
Would you say that
what was my next date?
Petro.
Oh,
yeah, the petrodollar recently.
And then just this past June 9th, OPEC, et cetera, and probably into the BRICS as well, they kicked us off from being the financial standard, the currency standard. So no more petrodollar, which was always fake. It was just a reason for us to go in and steal somebody else's oil.
Weaponized, right?
Totally.
Yeah, and that's basically what protected the world currency status, world reserve currency status is the power of our military. But what I thought was really important, what Joan said too, was the system that we have, the Federal Reserve system, it creates these booms and busts.
Right.
Because they
by
pump,
design.
Well, yeah.
Many times, yes.
Yeah, and then the question you have to ask yourself now is where in that next cycle are we? Because Joan mentioned that we blew up in 2008, right? So 16, 17 years later, the problem was never fixed. The only thing they did was make the bubble bigger, make the debt pool bigger. Right. And now we're at $35 trillion of debt. Who knows how many quadrillions of dollars worth of these banking derivatives. So what I took from that too, things are definitely changing. We may be near some sort of end of a cycle, and we may be very close to a situation where we're closer to blowing up rather than being closer to a healthy beginning. At least that's how I feel about it.
And so if we are closer to blowing up, then you have to go, what is real? What's real that I can hold on to? And Joan, that's where you get into saying, I could actually sleep at night because I knew that I had gold with me. I had gold at home to protect me.
Yeah, versus her paper, because you're talking about a lady that was very, very successful in her paper investments. But then she said to herself, well, maybe something has changed here, and I think I need to change course. Can you talk a little bit about that, Joan?
I learned a lot about the Federal Reserve. I went down the rabbit holes, and I decided that from seeing the way that the markets would come and go, it seemed like everybody was getting a certain phone call every day, either buy, or sell. And it just felt so not organic. And so I decided that I needed to have my security. I have children, and I needed the security. I needed to literally hold something in my hand that was worth something. And so for me, it was, I have a house, so that was some, but the bigger part of it was to have something to be able to trade that was worth something, maybe buy another house someplace else, maybe if we ever came to it, because we know that they are crashing, the Federal Reserve is deliberately crashing their own currency. Whether we want it to happen or not, there's nothing we can do about it. They decided to do it because they want everybody going to U.S. Digital coin. And so CBDC, central bank, again, private, digital coins. I need to touch. I need to hold. I'm not going to follow them and get taxed again for every single thing that I do. I'm not putting any more money into those pockets. I want to keep the money in my pockets. And the only way to do it is to have physical God's money. And that is gold and silver and platinum.
There you go.
Rainbow. I'm looking forward to having a rainbow currency. And I think that our POTUS, meaning Trump, is going to, I think that is his idea. And he finally floated out loud about getting rid of the IRS. I've told a lot of people, if you want to get rid of your federal income taxes, vote Trump. I've been telling them that for years. So for 3 or 4 years. So we have to get the Federal Reserve, they're deliberately crashing. We might as well let them crash, and we might as well protect ourselves, and we will come out on the other side the more comfortable.
There you go.
Yeah.
We will
That's
have
the way.
more,
See, that
more
brought
value.
it in nice. Exactly. Yeah. And I heard today that there's maybe more than a rumor going around that the Federal Reserve Bank was actually cyber hacked.
Really?
And yeah, so
No, I think they're starting. I think that they're starting because I think they're going to do that for potentially for the election. And so that way they'll say, oh, well, we can't have an election.
Another crisis.
Yeah, I would pray that they were hacked. But I think that it's fake. We'll see in another few days when they do some homework on it.
It is interesting. And, a lot of people, I think it sounds like we're all Trump supporters in this room. Many of you listening to this program right now, you are. We just can't expect Trump to be able to fix everything immediately. And that's why it is important to have that tangible asset, that thing that you can hold on to protect yourself, because you can't just expect a miracle to happen overnight. Now, we can work there. We'll be in a better position, but it can't be fixed overnight. The system is sick.
Yeah, well, this has been building up for such a long time. And listen, we all have our political favorite leaders, right? But, President Trump took the debt from 20 to 28 trillion in his 4 years. And, now we're at 35 trillion. So the point of the matter is that we're in a system that's addicted to debt. And in my opinion, it's kind of on the last end run, so to speak, like Joan's talking about. And how could you pretty much financially stay intact, at least for some of your nest egg, your IRA, maybe you have an old 401k, maybe you have some assets at the bank, or maybe even you just have some cash. How could you at least convert some of that to something you could hold, just like Joan did? Give yourself a chance, no matter what happens, when they tear this down, because we don't know exactly when. At least this way you'll be able to financially survive and come out of this on the other side.
Yeah, I think it's a really important point. And it also, a lot of times when we talk about gold and silver, we talk about precious metals, we talk about it as a hedge against inflation, which is absolutely true. But this is also about protecting yourself if things really do, or when things really do go south, so that you have that element, that you don't have to rely on trying to find an open bank to get out your money. You actually have it at home to use if you need to. And Joan, you mentioned it, even if you have to trade. I mean, God forbid we see these times, but they could be coming. And if they are, you want to be ready.
That's right. Be ready.
I think that things are coming. And when the fit hits the shan,
I like that. Yeah.
so to speak, I think that that's what we're going to need. We're going to need that. Not everybody has something to barter with. Even not everyone even has a service or needs to do that service to be able to feed their families. The dollar bill is how much? It's like $40 or $50 for a family of 4 at McDonald's, or even more than that now?
I went to McDonald's the other day, not to pick on McDonald's. I ordered 2 Egg McMuffin sandwiches, a hash brown, a coffee, and a water, $23.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gosh. And that's for the egg stuff. That's not even for the meat-ish stuff.
Yeah. But, that's where we're headed.
Yep.
And that's because it's a result of everything that Joan's been talking about with the Federal Reserve System. And like I said, we all know where we're headed, well, at least we should, and what we can do about it, and how to protect ourselves a little bit. And that's where the gold and the silver kind of comes into play.
And that's where you should talk to Midas Gold Group, because they are ready to help you. MidasGoldGroup.com is the website for a whole slew of resources. MidasGoldGroup.com, 855-322-4653, 855-322-4653. That spells out gold. 855-322-GOLD from Midas Gold Group. and always MidasGoldGroup.com. I want to tell you, Joan, it has been a pleasure to have you in studio with us. Maybe you'll stay for another show. Who knows? Maybe
we're gonna make her.
Maybe you'll come back. Maybe you'll come back next week. You think? Maybe.
I hope.
Joan, thanks so much for being with us. Thank you all for joining us. It's the Gold Standard Radio Show with Ken Russo and Jennifer Horn.